Hey guys, it's Stu here. Whilst Ollie and Lee are living their best lives over in Tennessee with Dave and having lots of fun by the looks of things, I've been interviewing quite a few different people on my channel, mainly to do with video editing because that's my thing. But I recently interviewed Professor Simon Holland. Now, he invited me onto his channel to discuss how to photograph a UFO or UAP, and in return, he's come on my channel and I got to obviously interview him about video editing and filmmaking because Simon has over 40 years experience with the BBC before he semi-retired and moved to the south of France. So we got talking about Rendlesham Forest and the RAF Bentwaters incident. So I thought it would be cool if I remixed the edit, did a bit of cutting, and even at that, it's still 40 minutes long, and give you guys a look at it on the Alien Addict channel. So enjoy this excerpt from what is a 2-hour interview on my channel. What made you want to create a YouTube channel?
Well, I didn't, but I'm a filmmaker and a film editor by training. And when we moved to France, we needed an income. And I thought, oh, maybe Google could pay you if you're a YouTube creator. What a mistake that was. But when we first moved to France, the thing to do, and I met some incredibly interesting people who told me all about our local French resistance. This little town we lived in had 2 resistance fighting groups, and we made a 1-hour cinema French film about the resistance, and it went down really well, and that kept me busy for 2 years. And I thought, I still want to keep on doing things. And then I remembered, and this was what was the initial idea for a YouTube channel. Working for BBC Science, only half a dozen Horizons, PBS, Novas, whatever, ever get commissioned. But there's researchers and people with good ideas pushing brilliant science subjects towards the program editors who go, nah, I'm not really interested in that. And so I had my head full of all the things that didn't make it to the screen over, as we discussed, 40 years of working in broadcast television. And I thought, I'll make a channel of all the things you didn't see on TV. And still, on my YouTube channel, it kind of it implies that. And that was the original idea.
Yeah, your taglines, science and history films you won't see on TV, which I think...
Yeah, I know. I've never changed it because it's kind of changed now. But that was the original idea. And I did 2 or 3 films that really I wanted made by the BBC. Specifically, the story of the Broken Arrow dropped 5 hydrogen bombs onto Spain, which got America booted out of Spain and NATO. It was just like, well, not NATO, but I mean, America bases booted out of Spain when they accidentally crashed a B-52 into a tanker.
Did they ever find all the bombs? Or was there...
Oh, it's a fantastic story, Stu. 4 of them fell on tomato fields and went off. This is the thing that people don't realize. Not as a nuclear explosion.
Yeah.
The conventional explosives surrounding the hydrogen bomb did explode, scattering to the tomato fields of southern Spain plutonium. And they've never got it all back. If you measure how much they retrieved, there's a wee bit still out there, and there's a mountain in Spain where goats feed on, which is out of bounds, and the US still have a scanning center for locals to check their radioactivity levels. It's really a great story. But one of the bombs fell into the Mediterranean, and a fisherman rowing out, I don't know if he's rowing out, saw this hydrogen bomb falling out of the sky after he saw the planes hit, and said it was like seeing a piano, so it kind of reveals its size, falling out of the sky that went kaplash next to him and sunk to the bottom of the Mediterranean. And it didn't go off. It was just like, it hit the water. It was fine, didn't break up, and it was complete. And then that's the real story. Both the Americans and the Russians aimed at that area and tried to retrieve the hydrogen bomb first. And the Russians really nearly got it. But the secret story is, you've probably heard of Woods Hole Oceanic Institute in...
Oh, yeah, Ballard's home.
Yeah, the Ballard thing. Not what it appears to be. It's actually the submarine Alvin, which is like, let's look at fish, is a retrieval submarine for the military, or can be used. And Alvin eventually found it.
His original thing about like going for the Titanic was to cover up the fact that he was looking for 2 subs. And
the finding the Titanic story is one of my favorites. I'm well into that. And he was paid to go. Well, he was paid. So there's a submarine graveyard where there's 2 sunken submarines which were nuclear, and they need to go and check every year or so to check how radioactive it is. It's really deep, and he was paid commission to go out and dive on that. And he said, I'll only do it if on the way back I can look for the Titanic. And he was told, absolutely not. He did it anyway, and he found it.
Yeah.
It is, But
it gave them such a good cover story, because obviously the Russians would have been well aware of their manoeuvres and what they were up to, not knowing the specifics, but they would have been spying on them. Because the one thing the Atlantic Ocean is full of is Russian trawlers that are basically spy trawlers.
Absolutely. You can see them out of your window as well in the Clyde.
Not so much these days.
No.
The when the submarines are returning to Faz Lane, it used to be when I was younger, they would just stay above the surface, but now they don't. They're always submerged.
Yeah. They are. Hopefully with good safety protocols. I went to school with the hapless crew of a Campbelltown fishing boat that got sunk by a British submarine.
Was that the one that got effectively dragged under?
It dragged under backwards in Kilbrannan Sound, killing them all. It just went woof backwards during a training exercise for a British submarine. And now they really, really have sonars and transducers and look for submarines, and they're a bit more careful. But that was a horrible story, and they really covered it up. They were kids I literally went to Campbelltown Grammar School with.
Yeah, that's a good
sad story. So there's all these great stories out there, which that's a classic one. Fishing boats and submarines, Titanic, and other great stories that don't quite make it to broadcast TV just because they have a limited slot. So that's what I first did. And then I realized that the films that people really liked had more of a mystery conspiracy theory about them. And Stuart, just like you, I lived in southern western Scotland, and I realized I grew up in a cottage right next to RAF Machrihanish, and I thought, oh shit! Excuse me, I knew all the stories from the time. Pardon?
Your father worked there, did he not?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I had the connection with my dad. So my dad is a mystery figure, which I'd slightly keep mysterious because of his role. He is a senior civil servant given the west coast of Scotland for lots of reasons, to be his area. And he was originally based in Helensburgh. And under some directive, he was moved to Campbelltown, where we and my family lived. Originally, we lived right next to Machrihanish while they built a house overlooking Campbelltown Loch. But my dad's role is slightly mysterious. He, I think, was moved down there because of the British government liaison that needed to take place between the Americans who were based at Machrihanish, the SEAL team, and something else, which I'm not actually going to say because it's going to come out in a future film. But Machrihanish had a American SEAL team base. It had nuclear storage facilities. It definitely had a whole bunch of, because of its geography, testing of exotic aircraft. But it had a role in NATO, which is deeply secret and has only been revealed to me in the last few years, which makes a lot of sense of what my dad did. My dad also was very involved in the POL fuel store. She's actually in Camelton Lough, and with a pipeline out to Machrihanish. And of course, he did lots of other things in whiskey industry and things like that. But I mean, but he's also was an interesting character, World War II tank commander from. And very kind of had a history of military and kind of connected. And he was very anti-nuclear weapons and also typical civil servant, hated money being wasted. And when the big main road from Faz Lane to Machrihanish was made into a straight A road rather than the wee winding Highland road that it always was when we first moved there, millions and millions of pounds were spent, and he took lots of investigations into that and supposedly it was for tourism. But strangely, it went from some place called Faz Lane and ended at the junction with RAF Machrihanish, leaving the last 5 miles into Campbelltown completely potholed wreck. And it turned out that the finance for that was as a military A road for, wait for this, cruise missiles and the transport of safe transport of weapons from the Faz Lane or the Greenock area of the Upper Clyde down to Machrihanish. And I
was just going to say, when did you originally do the Machrihanish, the first of Machrihanish video?
It was pretty early. It was like a couple of years into starting the channel.
Right.
I just thought.
I started watching your channel literally about 3 or 4 videos prior to the Machrihanish one.
Thank you. Yeah,
I think you were only like 10 or 12,000.
Oh yeah, it was very slow. A lot of the programs were historically based. I needed something to increase viewership, and the Machrihanish story just suddenly struck me. And the other thing that people kind of liked was telling personal family history stories. So, and Machrihanish has so many parts because not only is it Aurora, possibly, or secret aircraft, and its position, and it's well known in the kind of community as somewhere strange, but also the story of the Chinook helicopter crash on the Mall,
right,
which was a tragic and a fabulous story to tell some hidden history about, and it's the story that the Machrihanish is the story that keeps giving. So people reveal more of underground possible submarine bases, probably not.
Yeah.
And all that stuff. And you've been great. I mean, obviously your family connections with air traffic control and Machrihanish. Nick Pope's been really helpful. David Clark's been really helpful. And the whole story of Machrihanish is great. And that really helped launch my channel. So I realized that was the real interest. But that's really as far as I went. I didn't dabble into the kind of Roswell UFO department because I don't really like UFOs. I was
going to ask you that. Like, how do you feel about the whole sort of fringe science aspect to your channel? Because you are doing more UAP stuff than you've ever done before. I've noticed that. And obviously well, with a channel now that is UFO stuff.
Right.
Although we try and keep it to reining it back into reality, shall we say, rather than going completely out on the edge with it where possible. But so
no, all right. So that's a fantastic question and a good subject. So broadcast television won't touch a UFO story with a barge pole. I mean, pseudoscience, phenomenology, and all that is really edgy. But I've always been interested in it. But I've always approached the subject in kind of nuts and bolts terms and in a kind of scientific verification. I really dislike the idea or concept of disclosure, mainly because the very people who are holding the secrets, if there are any, are the people who make the secrets, the various governments throughout the world. And so the more scientific approach is what I like, and I really try and avoid woohoo theories. But I do absolutely think there's highly strange, which is a very specific term by Jacques Vallée, out there. Although the British MOD report onto UFOs pretty well sums up my theory, and it's my joke, is they said 80% of sightings are just misunderstood and could be easily explained. 20% we can't talk about because they're secret, and the rest are flying saucers. And I think that, that's pretty well my position. I think I've changed the 20% to 19. And I do now think that there is highly strange, but being somebody who's interested in physics and pushing boundaries, I want to understand them. I think there's a lot of misinformation. I think flying saucers and UFO stories have been used to manipulate the public. They've been used to discredit people. It's a well-known thing. I mean, if you look at how effective Orson Welles was with War of the Worlds, I think that was used by security services to put the willy up people and scare them panthless, about flying saucers. And I think also flying saucers are seen as fringe. So when people saw genuine secret stuff at Macranish or Area 51, or spotted a wee stealth aircraft over their village in the Midwest, they were told it was a flying saucer because that would be ridiculed to them when it really was the secret stuff. I think that's a very interesting history. So I want to get to verification of facts. Yeah. And some of the physics is very complicated and very interesting. And I just really didn't know where to start until I was introduced to this thing called the Rendlesham Forest Incident, which is kind of
you covered that.
Roswell.
Wait, I sit very much on the fence with that one.
Right. Well, I wasn't on the fence. I was in Norfolk rather than Suffolk on it. I mean, it was obviously the lighthouse. It was obviously an SAS prank. It was obviously just an exercise with the crash recovery team. They exist from Woodbridge until I met John Burroughs, somebody who experienced the highly strange, who was nearly killed by it, who was severely injured as a 21-year-old senior security officer at at Europe's biggest NATO nuclear base, twin bases of Bentwaters and Woodbridge. He definitely experienced something. He remembers what he experienced. His colleagues experienced it. There's records of what he experienced. And between you and me, I know what it was because he told me.
Right.
And we are working hard.
He experienced the time dilation effectively.
Yeah, he was physically damaged, and he definitely was encompassed by a strange effect, a glowing effect, possibly a plasma or something highly strange. And when he and his colleague reemerged, both of them with digital watches, or it doesn't matter, had lost 45 minutes. And that time dilation is very much a proof of what he had. But the biggest proof for me is what his symptoms were. And poor John Burroughs spent 15 years trying to get compensation and health care from the Veterans Association, who did... actually even denied he was in the Air Force. I mean, he had pay slips. He was that, he's like Woodbridge and Bentwaters, because it was so classified what he was exposed to. And I thought, well, they're trying to cover something up. So I very much said, what was your symptoms? And when we discovered that the British MOD Condign report, that was Freedom of Information released by David Clarke, lists the symptoms of exposure to high levels of plasma and non-ionizing radiation, there in it is John Burroughs' symptoms. Right. And my big question is, why was that report ever done? I mean, they're doing a report into people standing too close to flying saucers? No, this is all much bigger story. What happened at Rendlesham Forest, I can't tell you, is one word: weaponization. It was partially, at least, there's a bit of a strange element to it, but it's partially was somebody pressing a button and switching something on. And John knows that, and we know that, and we know who did it and why it was done. And it's a much bigger story, and we're hoping to do an enormous reveal on that. But we are wanting to do a major movie on it, and we were wanting to have it properly funded. So in the meantime, what we're doing is this kind of, I'm doing on my channel, and the Phenomenon Radio people are doing a podcast with John and James Warrow, who's our main researcher, and Race Hobbs, who is our voice and Phenomenon researcher, and myself, who are just being the voice of reason, I hope, and the history of physics, are looking into it to give everybody a background. But ideally, the way to do it, because we basically know what happened, it wasn't just 3 nights, it was weeks before and weeks after. And can I tell you one thing which would be intriguing? I'm just going to say one thing which might help explain. It won't explain, but it's a very intriguing fact that I've never said, is it involves Machrihanish. Really. Why and how it involves Machrihanish, I will tell you eventually. But anyway, I got so involved with these people. John Burroughs is very truthful, very honest. He fought a big fight. He gained compensation, although he was told at his settlement that he would never be told exactly what he was exposed to. But so he spent being on a 40-year quest and reaches out to anybody who can help with genuine, takes him seriously information. And James Warrow has been his amazing ally looking at science. And I interviewed John, and John and I immediately connected. And I said, I'm interested in the physics. And he said, that's the aspect that nobody's really looking into. People are looking into crop circles and weirdnesses in Suffolk, but they're not looking at the history of 1980, the Cold War, SDI projects, British history of physics, directed energy weapons, Orford Ness, Bawdsey, Marshall Sherman. I'm going too far now. It's all connected. Yeah, I want you and your viewers to answer me this one question. It's a simple question, but the answer is fantastically interesting. Why did the incident happen in a small scrubby woodland called Rendlesham Forest? If you understand why it happened there in East Anglia in Suffolk, think about it. Ask some big questions, and you'll get some really interesting answers to what it actually is in that surrounding area that happens to all tie into a piece of scrubby woodland called Rendlesham Forest. And that's just been obsessively interesting to me because it reveals something strange. It exposes in a non-classified way a military weaponization of physics. It's a history of what happened from World War II to the 1980s in Britain, very much more than America. And we have a personal story of somebody who was injured, exposed to the highly strange, and has evidence in his body, and is incredibly interesting to talk to. And people are very interested in John Burroughs in the kind of U.S. science and military community, because he enclosed in his body is evidence of what they did, or what happened, or what it was. It affects humans. Yeah. And so, isn't that the ultimate story? Yes. So that's why It's a good one.
Definitely. I mean, I would say my take on things is definitely from a physics point of view, as well, rather than the outlandish. I'm not a big fan of like alien abductions or anything like that, you know. And I try to, where possible, have a skeptical eye over things. I end up debunking quite a lot on the channel.
Sure.
Recently, the Billy Myers stuff, we crack at, you know, because basically it's a lot of nonsense. So yeah, I work at that, the alien addict stuff and doing their videos and whatnot.
Hope that we've got some interest, but we're looking for a broadcaster or a production company who could actually pay it. It's not, but it would be a shame. It's such a good story, really good story, that we don't want to do it as a 15-minute YouTube video. We want to do it as a film all around the world. We don't have a travel budget. It needs to be shot properly. It needs to have a composer. It needs to have the big thing that we really need, which would really cost, is 3D graphic design. Because to explain the relationship of various research facilities and also explain the effect that was produced and some of the strange things that happened, obviously you can't go out and film it, and it's no good just putting a wee drone in Rendlesham Forest and fly. I mean, that's what people have done, done flashlights behind a tree. Yeah. John Burroughs is fed up with that. He's been involved in many of those films, and he knows exactly what he saw, and the way in the description of what he actually saw, not what people think he saw. And interestingly, different to what other U.S. Air Force people saw at the same night. And that's very revealing, the difference of how they experienced an alternative reality as part of the effect. But just taking it from John Burroughs' point of view, he wants to do it properly. And we've discussed it in great detail of how we would do it. And I think it really needs a photorealistic CGI 3D graphics. And of course, that's not one of my skills.
Plenty of people out on, really gifted young people out on YouTube.
I know.
Who are doing stuff on a regular basis. So I don't think you'd have problems finding.
No, we've connected with somebody who's a really good 3D animator who does us line drawings. We needed to explain the difference in radar systems between pulse radar and continuous wave. And he was I gave him some style sheets, and he just like, oh, there's a 3D animated radar dish in a plane and pulses. So I went, oh, that's great. But to do CGI realistic figures and the phenomenon that they experienced and really go into depth, it just needs some money, really. And so it's a great story. Anybody want to get involved, email me. I would definitely work with a younger CGI graphic designer who wanted to invest their time in it. But it's a serious job. We want to do it as a broadcast or cinema quality thing. If they can do it, which I know people can.
Rather than sort of going to a production company or direct likes of Prime or Netflix, you maybe crowdfund the...
Oh, fantastic idea. We haven't even thought about that. It is... I think just basically the travel needs and the interviews and then the graphics, the composer and whatever, you're talking, even if we did it for zero cost for our own wages, you're talking, I think, maybe $100,000 to $200,000.
Yeah, I'm just thinking
it would be expensive.
Are you aware of Dr. Stephen Greer and all that he does?
Oh, well, how is he involved?
No, it's just
in the way that he raises money, or the things that he says.
No.
Oh no,
I don't even want to go into.
No, I don't. Where are you going with this?
Yeah, it's more from the point of view of the last 3 or 4 documentaries that he's put out. He's effectively crowdfunded them because we take issue with the fact that he will quite easily state it costs over $1 million to create one of his films, when quite clearly. You're lucky if it was maybe $60,000 to put it together.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
I would understand from your perspective that what you would like to do would certainly be a much, much bigger budget. But he certainly has no problems getting the crowdfunding aspect of things.
That's a great tip. Yeah, we could possibly do that. We also need the way that broadcast works and people like Netflix work is there's almost no point in making a film. I mean, I've been involved in this for 30, 40 years. There's no point in making a film unless you've actually got an output for it. I mean, we need to actually to have Netflix to actually say, if you made it and this is not even to pay for it, just to green light it as a possible interest. We're not there yet because I think we're moving in that direction because I think a lot of these stories are particularly interesting. Between you and I think there's a big reveal coming up and it's not what you expect. I think the whole UFO story has been hijacked in a way. But
are you talking about the recent
the David Grush?
Yeah,
David Grush, very, very interesting. But look who David Grush works with. Look who David Grush is associated with. Look at a small inner core A-list ufologists. And I think there's a hidden agenda. I think there is more to this than meets the eye. And that's another story, but that needs kind of doing. That's not about flying saucers. It's not about UAP, but it's about people and possibly people wanting political religious regime change. I've probably said enough.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that it's probably more closely linked to the geopolitical things that are going on between China and Taiwan than anything else.
Well, then that's a very interesting statement, Stu. Yes, I would completely agree. That was my original idea, and what immediately when I learned what actually happened at Rendlesham was this word weaponization, a military project. And if you look at the history of stealth, if you look at the SDI Star Wars history, the idea behind that was to build a technology, have it practical, have it complete, and then years later go to the world, we're thinking of maybe building a stealth fighter. And that absolutely is a message to your enemy that that's something that you're working on, when in fact you've already done it. And so I wonder whether the so-called, there isn't really a term for them, but the Navy Nimitz Go Fast gimbal release from 2015 was actually misinformation, and the two people who released it are misinformation officers, that was a message to China or Russia about some biotechnology, which obviously they were demonstrating there was capabilities in that field, because they certainly weren't what they appeared to be.
No, I mean, I obviously looked at the footage closely. And like everybody else, struggled to kind of wrap my head around what you were actually looking at. I think one of the videos quite clearly is a balloon or a duck or something.
Like duck,
flapping winged thing. It's definitely not a UAP or any kind of ET extraterrestrial type thing. And that's the thing. I mean, there's so much of this stuff is just a nonsense. But I mean, the likes of videos that are released by like Jeremy Corbell when he's talking about things that he's released in terms of, I'm thinking the night vision stuff.
The bokeh iris video.
You instantly what that was.
You would. I did too. And it's just, I'm surprised that the DOD and this inner circle that want to plant the idea that they're out there, they're here now. Christopher Mellon is putting out such poor level videos that I, Midwest, and everybody can look at from and go, it's a duck, it's a iris bokeh, it's not really the FLIR camera gimbal is moving in a strange parallax way, which people are smart. They needed to release something. I've yet to see something that I go, that's weird.
Yeah.
I see things and say, it's strange, but it's not strange enough. I've often thought that, the single point light source, as we talked about in How to Photograph a UFO, is probably Venus or a landing light. If I genuinely saw a flying saucer, I would want it to be very strange. The size, the speed, the interaction with our reality would be interrupted. I don't think it's aluminum. I don't think it's got portholes. I don't think it's got rivets. And I don't think, I just want it to be, I want to see it. I really think they're out there. I think aliens quite likely are sending drones, at least unmanned or uncreatured, to Earth. I think it makes sense. But I want to see weird ones. I don't want to see metallic covered foil balloons. I don't want to see ducks. And I think if you're putting that forward as evidence that they're here now, rubbish. Show us the weird stuff. Maybe they can't. And that's why I think Avi Loeb's project, Galileo, if he can genuinely capture something, if they're really out there, on his independent, non-classified scientific instruments that measure stuff and you can reveal how the sensors work, rather than hide behind, I'm not telling you how our FLIR works, or we can't reveal the platform. But Avi's, if he can actually capture something and say, this is weird, I so want that to happen as soon as possible. Please take pictures and share it. And also, I think you and I know that when somebody sees something highly strange, the real genuine McCoy, it's going to be on YouTube, it's going to be on Twitter, it's going to be on a social media source long before it's on broadcast TV or the newspaper. So this is the place. Stay tuned to yourself, your colleagues, and myself, because as soon as we see something which we say, this really is significant, this is very important, this is the place to see it.
Yeah.
Do you think?
No, definitely. Anyway, tell the people
yes.
to find you.
Oh, I am totally invisible. You can't find me. No, I hide. We live in Southwest France. And I expect to knock on the door from Men in Black every single day. So far, they haven't got my address. I'm sure they know where I live. But, and very much run the Professor Simon YouTube channel. My background is science. I'm not a PhD professor, but I did teach at university level. So I'm a senior educationalist. And if you look up the definition of professor, maybe that's but it was supposed to be a joke. It's slightly backfired. But my channel,
the nutty professor things.
it was. But I mean, look at me. I am the nutty professor, and that was the idea. But just completely, it's been a nightmare. But I can't change now. I wish I'd called myself the Y files.
Oh, EG's stuff is phenomenal.
Oh, I know.
Love his channel. I mean,
and the wee goldfish.
Yeah. No, the Hecklefish or whatever he's called. The one thing that I admire about his channel is he does dip into some real, fringe stories, but he seems to manage to present it in such a way that YouTube are loving them. Whereas,
we could talk more about YouTube and how they choose to love some people and not everybody. And that's a good future chat. But because, I've done YouTube now for nearly 6 years. And so the algorithm and the ins and outs of YouTube and its good points and its bad points are quite obvious to me now, how it works.
Yes.
And various inside communication with YouTube creators. But no, I enjoy making films. I'll always make films. For me, the real fantastic contribution to films and ideas and also pulling me up on things I get wrong is Patreon. So I have a bunch of about 500 patrons who all come from science and engineering backgrounds with a fascinating history, who suggest stories. I give them early previews of things that I'm working on, sometimes just a basic A-roll before I illustrate it. They are very good, and also they support me just with a couple of dollars, which is way more than Google, who own YouTube too. So for me, I've enjoying Patreon filmmaking more than YouTube, but I'll continue on the Professor Simon channel on YouTube because it reaches an audience. But and always keep making films, keep chopping the broccoli, as you say in the editing world. I love it. I can't do anything else. So thanks for this interview, Stuart. It's been brilliant.
Nope, it's been a pleasure, and I will no doubt have you back on the channel in the near future. We'll go into more.
We can talk about Rendlesham Forest.
And we can talk about Rendlesham Forest. I probably need to get you over onto Ollie and Lee.
Yeah,
I think
sure. When the time's right and we're ready to do the big reveal.
Yeah, well, they do.
It's going to be a big story.
They do 3 shows. They do one in Rockfin, which is very much not censored.
Okay.
They can say a lot more things freely, shall we say. They have a Friday night show, which I usually participate in. And then on a Sunday night, Lee takes over and takes charge of the show. But I mean, the lads have actually been over in America because one of our other panelists, Dave, invited them over. So he's giving them very much an experience of what Tennessee's like in America. So they've been shooting guns and paranormal stuff and having an absolute blast. So they're just back literally from their little holiday adventure in the last 24 hours.
And do they shoot video which you edit together as longer form films, or is it just adult discussion?
No.
Oh, yeah.
This is kind of first time they've been out and about with the stuff. So I'm hoping they've got a good pile of video for me to edit up. One of the things that I'll be doing with my channel, I tend to edit in the mornings. So I'm going to start going live just ad hoc. And if people want to watch me while I'm actually working, they will be able to.
Good.
As well as doing an actual sort of live show. This is effectively my reboot of my podcast. So you're the first guest. I've got another 2 lined up. So thank you once again. I'm going to end the recording now, and we can chat briefly off screen.
Yeah, okay.
So
bye, everybody.
bye.